Ladies Coupe is a novel by Anita Nair, published in 2001. The novel tells the journey of a middle-aged Indian woman named Akhila as she travels to Kanyakumari in the search for independence. On the train's Ladies Coupe, she swaps stories with 5 different women who inspire her to lead her own life. The other 5 women are Janaki, a pampered wife and confused mother; Margaret Shanti, a chemistry teacher married to an insensitive tyrant; 14-year-old Sheila, with her ability to perceive what others cannot; Prabha Devi, the perfect daughter and wife, transformed for life by a glimpse of swimming pool; and Marie Kalantu, whose innocence was destroyed by one night of lust. In this vlog, the 3 characters that we will focus on are Janaki, Sheila Vasudevan, and Margaret Shanti.
Janaki, a certain age. Janaki is the oldest of the 6 women in Ladies' Group. She is recognized as an obedient daughter, a devoted wife, and a caring mother. Janaki has always been protected by men throughout her life. First, there was my father and brother, then my husband. When my husband is gone, there will be my son, waiting to take off from where his father left off, which led her to end up being a fragile princess. Besides, as Janaki grew older, she always felt angry and upset towards her husband, and she had been wondering if it was because of her age. When did the certain age creep up on Janaki? Did she realize it first when she no longer lacked his arm around her waist? Or maybe it hit her when she stopped marking the calendar on the day her periods began. But at the end of the day, Janaki was just a pampered wife who was scared of losing her husband. Janaki married Prabhakar when she was 18 and he was 27. Their marriage was arranged by both families as their horoscopes were perfectly suited for each other. "Oh, leave me alone," Janaki snapped and walked out of the shoe shop, leaving father and son together. To Janaki, this moment was one of the reasons she felt that the certain age crept up on her. Sometimes, if it was a couple who they enjoyed having over or a cousin whom Janaki had adored as a child, he would whisper in her ear, "Happy?" and she would smile. At that moment, she felt truly happy. Janaki and Prabhakar had their family over at their house. At that time, Janaki felt happy and content with her life and marriage. She moved closer and fitted the length of her body to his side. She felt him hold his breath and then gradually, in wonder, exhale. Janaki was tired of sharing her husband with anyone, including her son. She just wanted to have him all to herself and return home as soon as possible.
14-year-old Sheila hardly recognized the meaning of masculinity and femininity, yet she has to face the sourness of the femininity as her friend Hasina's father tries to seduce her. He swabs her upper lips with his forefinger. Thereafter, Sheila mopped her face with a hanky each time she entered Hasina's home. Sexual exploitation of a girl child displays the dark side of masculinity. Sheila decides never to go to Hasina's house. Sheila loves her grandmother, Amuma, intensely that she always thinks about her grandmother's death. Her grandmother was 69 years old who had self-confident and courageous. She was considered as a model for Indian women, a manifestation of femininity. She thinks if she were to die in her sleep, she would do so looking her best. Her children, of course, dismiss it as a sign of age and its concurrent eccentricity. When she dies, Sheila speedily eradicates the thin stand from her chin and brushed almost all white hair on her head. She rubbed one of her aunt's foundation into her face and decorated her with heavy jewelry.
Thereafter, Sheila mopped her face with a hanky each time she entered Hasina's home.
This was because Sheila didn't want Nazar to touch her face ever again.
Sheila felt her breath lodge in her throat, and when she saw the hurt in Hasina and her mother's eye, shame wrapped itself around her.
This happened when Nazar noted the bows on Sheila's blouse. Sheila decided to never wear the blouse again.
You must not become one of those women who groom themselves to please others. The only person you need to please is yourself.
Amuma told that to Sheila because Sheila reminded her of herself. She didn't want Sheila to be like her mother and aunties.
Margaret Shanti, another woman in the ladies' coupe, is a successful chemistry teacher embroiled in an unhappy marriage with Ebenezer Powrach, the principal of the school she works in. She was struggling with alienation and lost identity, but rather than to stop dreaming, she uses her freedom of choice to gain her individuality. She decides to fight back in the form of soft revenge, and finally, she got to subdue her husband. Page 103. Among the 5 elements that constitute life, I classify myself as water. Water that moistens, water that heals, water that forgets, water that accepts, water that flows tirelessly, water that also destroys, for the power to dissolve and destroy is as much a part of being water as wetness. When Margaret understands that she is isolated, she eats lots of food and put on weight, until one day, when she saw James, the golden fish, died. That becomes the turning point in her life, because she did not want to end her life floating like that fish. To build her individual aspiration, as the chemistry teaches, she knows how well that water works. That's when she labels herself as water, which is not only blends, but also have destructive power that works silently.
Page 112. So, I agreed to an abortion. You won't feel a thing, he said as we walked down the corridor of the semi-private wing at the hospital. He had made all the arrangements, and all I had to do was go along. Margaret's marriage at first seems like a fairy tale for her. Her husband, Eve, loves her from the bottom of his heart, but didn't allow her individuality. He doesn't ready to accept her individual life, dislikes, whims, fancies, and even her dreams. Margaret, she's like a little girl who says yes to whatever her husband says and ready to do anything for him, which also led her to agree with this abortion despite her desire to have a child. Page 140. I am a good cook when I want to be. I am sensitive cook and when I wish it. So the ingredients hit my commands. But for long, I had cooked like my odd inclined student did their chemistry experiment. It had to be done, and so it got done, with neither a sense of joy nor any pride in what the result would be. Not any more, I thought. My cooking would have a sense of purpose now, but first I had to persuade Eve to let down his defense, to open his senses and taste bud to me. Realizing the situation she's in, Margaret would like to divorce him but does not do so because she's afraid of society. So she develops a unique strategy to turn the tables in her favor. Knowing that Eve loves for food, she pampered and fed him with oily food till he fed, as seeking revenge for all the depression, her silenced voice, her freedom, and her physical and mental suffering. Eventually, she, who once controlled by him earlier, now holds him completely in her hands.
Hello! So we have seen three significant quotes related to each character, which are Sheila, Janaki, and Margaret. Now, let us listen to some opinion about these three characters.
Out of three characters, we are most interested in Janaki and Margaret Shanti, as both of the women shared same similarities. One of it is they were synonymous with the notion of being a good wife. As for Margaret Shanti, she's always say yes to whatever her husband says, although he did not allow her individuality. While for Janaki, she's a good wife to her husband in terms of being faithful, obedient, and virtuous. What about you?
As for me, it is because of their difference. They're both married women, however, after some time, they become unhappy with their marriage. Janaki, even though she was unhappy, she still remained the faithful and good wife towards her husband. However, Margaret, she decided to go against her husband by feeding him to fatten him up to lower his self-esteem. Do you want to add anything?
No, yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay, as for me, in my opinion, all of them have different ways of life. But if we were to compare the character, Sheila and Janaki would be a good one because they have a huge gap in age, where Sheila is the youngest, and Janaki is the eldest. So they live in different era. Okay, you.
I would like to add another point. In my opinion, Sheila is more close to her grandmother Amuma, while Janaki has been taken care of the whole life, starting from her father now to her husband. So we can say here that Sheila is an independent girl compared to the pampered Janaki, which depends being dependent towards everyone around her.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, thanks.
So we would talk about Sheila and Margaret.
Yes.
So in terms of similarities, I could say that from the whole story, you can see that there is actually a sense of love appear in the story that have changed both character in the way they behave. So as for Margaret, you can see that she's married to a person that she loves, which is Ebenezer Pauraj. So after the marriage, you can see that she is being very loyal to the husband, and even though her husband asked her to abort, she did. And then as for Sheila, she expresses her love towards her grandmother. You can see when she dressed up her dad Amuma because she knows that the action that she has taken would please her grandmother, despite she knowing that her father or the rest of her family would not agree with the action taken. So what about you?
Yes, for these two characters, Margaret and Sheila, at first they seem to conform to the traditional expectation of the patriarchal society. But toward the end, they take an action to free themselves from this ill treatment. For example, Margaret decided to feed her husband, Eve, till he fed. And for Sheila, she decided to live her life taught by her grandmother, Amuma,
right,
yes?
yeah, Amuma.
Okay.
Kiss me hard before you go. Summertime sadness. I just wanted you to know baby, you're the best.